Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Good morning. This is Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and today we're discussing toolkits. Bye-bye, Fresnel. Lessons learned, really bright lights, and the future of Manhattan, all on Light Talk.
And this is David coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. If you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers.
Sure, whatever you say. Sure.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 205. And we have to put a disclaimer out because Stan has gotten his second COVID shot yesterday, which means that right now the after effects could be kicking in.
They have.
Stan was able to go to the CPAC down in Orlando and not wear a mask. I saw him. He was right there at the Golden Idol.
He was at the Golden Idol. I saw him.
That was me, just like the Jews and Moses and the calf. That was me right there, bowing down to the golden mental illness that
it's more of the golden pig than the golden calf, but that's too much.
What would Mel Brooks say? What would Mel Brooks say?
What happens when you put mental illness in charge of a country? Let's find out.
Okay, here we go. So anyway, Stan, so we got some pictures to blackmail him with. So we just have to say right at the top that Stan may go off the edge today.
I'm in a little weird space. It's true. I've got antibodies and B cells and B memory cells and spike proteins, and some are shaped like little Ys and some are shaped like little spikes, and it's a key and it fits in a lock and it stops the spike from there. I read all about it, and and I'm feeling the science.
So are you the key master?
That's right. I am the key master.
So Stan got his second shot yesterday. I got my second shot 3 weeks ago.
I got a swab up my nose 2 days ago, so I could go film for 4 days.
Oh, there you go. Well, happy
we're still waiting on it here, man. It's that little blizzard put Dallas behind, put all of Texas behind about 2 weeks.
The doctor told me I can travel. Should just show you. I've got the card. David, you have the card?
I have my card. I lost my first card.
Damn that government giving out cards, You
will show us your card?
I'm a card-carrying member of the vaccinated.
There you go. So anyway, let's get started. First of all, we have some news. Light Talk news. We had a lot of response to our TikTok performances by Lily Annabelle and, of course, Ethan. And we decided, just for fun, to sort of expand this out. And we're going to sort of kick this off to Steve to tell us about it.
Well, we are going to give a not safe for dishwasher coffee mug with our logo on it to, the best TikTok or video that comes across our website. We're going to wrap this up on April Fool's Day. So you can do a TikTok, as you've seen, or maybe if you've got an old Hog Factor file laying around and you want to light the full Gabanza bean there of 90 seconds, we'll consider that also.
And we'll be bringing in judges from the Faroe Islands.
Yes. But they're not really lighting experts.
But neither are we.
That's true, too. The interesting thing is that we could do our own Hog Factor at LDI.
Tossing down the gauntlet.
I don't need any more competition.
It wouldn't be the Hog Factor. It would be Lumen Factor or something like that.
It would be the joke factor.
The joke factor, right.
I told you, look out for me today. I don't know what's coming out of my mouth.
It's happening already. We're going to gauge your progress or regress, depending on what happens here during this next 40 minutes. So the Light Talk TikTok competition, get your entries in. We wanted to talk a little bit about the summer theater update because what's happening now is that, we are actually at a point of time where it looks like cases are going down. A lot of companies are being very optimistic and are planning as if they are going to have a season. Now, I know the company I've been working for the past 21 years, Central City, they are planning on a season that starts in June. And we're looking at outdoor venues. And I think that's what's happening to a lot of these companies is that, they're not even thinking about doing anything inside. Obviously, outdoor venues with social distancing. Small shows, by the way. You're never going to see these big musicals. That's one thing that's not going to happen. Because as it stands now, if it does happen, everybody has to be at least 6 feet away from each other with masks. Now, if you're an opera singer singing with a mask on, that's going to be very interesting. However, they are making these specialized masks now for singers that I have heard about. So that's kind of interesting. But I've started working on the show. I've designed a set for it, and we shall see. And I assume that other companies are doing the same. Now, I also saw this week that the Dallas Shakespeare Festival, unfortunately, they have to cancel their season primarily due to all the water damage that happened during the freeze. Steve, have you heard about that?
No, I haven't. But I mean, I can imagine that. I mean, Dallas was, like most of Texas, was laid waste. I still have students who are couch surfing with other students because they have no power or no water at their apartments.
Wow.
I mean, this is pushing beyond 2 weeks now.
Yeah, that's bad. That's really bad. But I think they were planning on doing a season. And again, that's an outdoor festival, which they could have done good social distancing. So I think it's going to be possible. Let's keep our fingers crossed that some of these summer festivals will be happening. Also, PPP updates. The PPP is out there. It still has money in it. If you haven't applied, you should. And you can help, with your finances through a good PPP loan. Again, you don't have to have anybody on salary. This is also for independent contractors like us, with people with flow-through income, which is 90%, I believe, of theater people are classified as independent contractors or sole proprietorships. You can apply for a PPP, and this is a loan, but it is a forgivable loan, and they are forgiving like most of these loans. And even if they don't, it's like a 1% interest, but they are forgiving most of the loans. So again, highly recommend this to help you out financially. So Steve has our first question.
Yes, there's kind of a segue there. Murph in Louisiana writes, can you suggest a toolkit I should build for work as an electrician this summer? So there's Murph. Murph is either optimistic or he or she has a job. So, I assume you have a crescent wrench. And I assume, you probably have yourself a little multi-tool. I'm assuming you're through college also or studying in college. So, those two things are kind of out of the way. But the first advice I would give you is don't buy things you don't need. So don't get sucked into spending hundreds of dollars. And also don't buy things that the theater should be providing. So don't, show up with a case of gaffer's tape and electrician's tape with you. Don't fall into that trap of, I'll take tape with me. The same thing, Sharpies, pencils, pens, notepads, these are things theaters should be supplying. So if you're building your first kind of little gig bag there, I would say definitely get yourself a pair of work gloves and go try some stuff on. Don't buy the first pair of gloves you see. You can walk into Lowe's or Home Depot or most any good hardware store and find all this sitting right there. And it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg. I would say a set of screwdrivers. I personally, carry a little Klein reversible stubby screwdriver with me. I kind of like that because it's comfortable in my hand when I'm putting connectors together. Pliers, needle nose pliers, maybe. I think when I was doing that kind of work, I probably used my needle nose pliers twice a year. So that might be a little bit of a luxury. I would definitely invest in a pair of Klein heavy-duty wire strippers. Those are about $20. They're the really good ones. They strip the wire, they hold the cable. Don't cheap out there because probably that's what you'll be doing. And I would throw in a side cutter too. So there's a few tools. Maybe get yourself a second adjustable wrench and get something good. Don't go down to the dollar store. The same thing, get a good knife. Get a knife that an electrician's going to use. Again, I would say look at Klein, look at Case. That little Spyderco sitting on your hip, that's a great knife, but I would get something that's a little bit more robust and you don't mind. Maybe a beater knife, because what you're doing is you're, cutting cable up and using that in a very rough way. And finally, I would say a tape measure, probably a multimeter, and you don't have to get an expensive one. You can get something that does continuity testing for $10. And that's probably what you're primarily going to be doing. And of course, a flashlight. If you want to go inexpensively, I would say go to eBay, my friend, and look for Craftsman tools that were built in the USA. They're going to be great. Also, Klein and Nipix. Those are 3 good companies to buy tools from. You know, the thing is, you don't want to buy cheap and pay $5 for a pair of pliers that are just kind of crap. And then 2 weeks later, you go buy a pair of pliers for $15. All you've done is spent $20 when you could have just spent $15. Finally, you said a tool bag. Those are easy. You can go down to a military surplus store and find an inexpensive tool bag. Again, you walk in Home Depot or Lowe's, you're going to find little tool bags made by Husky or Milwaukee or DeWalt. And if you're in no rush, you know, you can build this bag slowly. I mean, I know you're getting ready for summer, but the thing to keep in mind is the Father's Day sale. Tools are marked way down for that. Also Christmas sales. So that's kind of my advice. Build your kit slowly and carefully. And I would buy the best tool I could so I didn't have to buy it twice.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth. The first thing that came to mind as you were talking about don't buy the perishables is gloves. A really good pair of gloves. I would not skimp there. And then make sure you put your name on them. So when you put them down to where you can find them. I think the gloves. I personally like the yellow cowhide ones myself. And then I'm kind of from my ear and I cut the fingertips off so I can feel things with it. And I wonder about whether he wants to put a soldering iron in that kit. You know, we do a lot of control wire these days, and that's like a weak link in the chain. So sometimes you might need to solder a DMX connector. And I wonder about this one too. And I recently taught myself how to do this, we use so much more Ethernet now than we ever used, RJ45 connectors. So I do own an RJ45 crimper. And I have that to fix, and I had to learn how to put the wires in the correct order on RJ45s and slip them in. It's a little bit of an art form there.
You know, if you're going to get a soldering iron, Weller makes a little station soldering iron for about $34.
Yeah.
I'm just going to toss the gauntlet down here. Weller, you're crap. You know, but it's also only $33. So what are you expecting? It's $33. You know, I would step up to the Hakko, Hakko. Hakko makes a really good soldering station for about $100.
Yeah,
and it's going to last you forever. Mostly because it has a really good temperature control on it. And if you don't know how to solder, have someone teach you.
Yeah.
Have someone teach you how to solder. You know,
correctly.
So you're not just kind of gobbing stuff together.
Soldering is fun. I always just loved to solder. Did you guys ever make slot cars when you were young?
Yes.
Yes,
I
you
did.
used to solder those things together, if I remember correctly. It was a lot of fun.
We had a whole store where you could go there on Sunday morning. They had these huge slot car races.
Yes, with big tracks.
Big tracks.
Those were the days. I'm telling you, that was a lot of fun back then, the slot cars.
Man, we still do that in Dallas.
You do? Really? Do you slot car in Dallas?
I drag race.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
So, you know, my top car goes 124 miles an hour. But most of my cars go about 30 or 40 miles an hour. But
these are slot cars?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I have one accessory I want to add to the soldering thing that I don't know if you can, I'm sure you can find these now from some other manufacturer, but back in the day, Radio Shack, which doesn't exist anymore, I don't think. Maybe they do online.
And Fry's doesn't exist either.
Yeah, Fry's is out of business now.
So two of them are gone.
But I wanted to say, they had this thing called helping hands. So like it was a heavy weight with these little arms and elbows and ball joints and alligator clips. So you could hold the wire with one clip and hold the connector with another clip and put the wire where you need it. So your two hands were freed up to hold the solder and the soldering iron. So I guess those things are out there from other manufacturers now. But trying to solder without something that you have some alligator clips and helping hands, they called it, could be a little bit tedious. So
just go down to your local head shop and get a roach clip.
There you go.
You bring up a good point, though. Having an old, nasty alligator jaw clip in your box that you paid 20 cents for makes a big difference when the wire's heating up and you're burning your fingers.
Exactly. That's my point. Yeah. Robert in South Africa writes, is the Fresnel going the way of the Parcan? Well, I don't know where the Parcan went. I heard it went to Mexico, and they're making par lamps down there for some people. I don't know. It does seem to me that we've been moving ever since like Roscoe invented all of these different levels of diffusion. People have been, using profile lights and diffusing it. And I would imagine that the concentration of the condenser lenses in profile fixtures collimates the light better, right? And then if you want to soften it, then we have other methods now of softening that light. So it probably is. Although I posted recently on the internet, there's a company here in St. Augustine, Florida, that's making replicas of these beautiful Fresnel lenses for lighthouses, because there are lighthouses all over the world that need new lenses. So these guys have kind of filled that niche, and some people buy them just as a sculptural art piece in their living room. And I was sort of shocked. They're really quite beautiful. It's like a huge crystal, and then the process by which they're made is really interesting. So I don't know. I was asking the guys just before the show if the wash lights today, what kind of lenses are they using in them? Are they aspheric lenses, or are they plano convex lenses? I really don't know the answer to that. So this is a good topic. What do you guys know about this?
Well, my immediate answer is, unless you're building a lighthouse, yes, they're going the way of the parkan, or as Steve says, the dodo bird, or the buffalo. Although, Steve, you always say going the way of the buffalo, but buffaloes are still around,
Oh, eating buffalo burgers.
I mean,
wonderful.
buffalo cheese, that's buffo mozzarella, is buffalo cheese. It's made out of buffalo milk.
Is that so?
Yes. You haven't been watching your Stanley Tucci.
I haven't.
Well, you
right.
ought to watch it, because they tell you how they make all the amazing food back to Italy. And the first episode was on a place you've been to, Stan, Napoli. And they talk about the genesis of the pizza, and they talk about buffalo cheese, which is the buffo mozzarella.
But do you need a lighthouse to have the buffalo cheese?
No, that has nothing to do with buffalo cheese lighthouses. So, yeah, unless you're building a lighthouse, no, you don't need a Fresnel lens. And as a matter of fact, I wonder if even modern lighthouses use Fresnel lenses. I need to get some information about that. But no, I mean, Fresnel lenses, buying a Fresnel really limits yourself. I mean, because what are you going to do with it, I mean, you can get the same exact quality of light by putting a good piece of diffusion in front of a Alico. And an Alico, you get to, put in shutters. You get to do a lot of things you can't do with a Fresnel. And they usually have better optics, and it's usually a more powerful light. Unless you're using maybe a 5K Fresnel or a 10K Fresnel, like we use in Europe. A lot of times we use these HMI Fresnels. Yes, absolutely. We still use those. But for smaller fixtures, in the, 575 watt to 2,000 watt range, I think a Fresnel is a waste.
Well, I mean, I think for the theater, I think the Fresnel has seen better days. But I think where Fresnels are going to have a long life is, as you suggest, the higher wattages that are used in television and film. So that's the mainstay of Fresnels these days, I think.
Well, Corey in the Midwest writes, once COVID is behind us, will the university classroom return to the old normal, or have educators learn something about the method and delivery of education? Now, Stan and I had a little sort of difference on this one, because I claim that in a studio class where you're teaching an art form that depends on collaboration and synergy and group dynamics, that you have to be in the same room. And I believe Stan says, no, you don't have to be. So I don't think that's going to change. We both have our different opinions about that. So I think that you really need to be in the same room, obviously. However, we have learned that there are ways of making the online experience very valuable. I believe Stan mentioned before about being able to have instant access to a lot of documentation that he could show. I would argue that you can actually do the same in a classroom if your computer is hooked up to a projector, and you can just pull it up as you would normally in an online situation. But will it change the old normal? I hope so, because that's how I really enjoy teaching, and that is being in that same room. What do you guys think?
Well, it seems to me that the old normal is not adequate anymore. We've now realized there's a world we can tap into. And, if I'm a generalist at a theater and I'm teaching a production class and I don't really know anything about rigging, then bringing someone in by Zoom who does know something about rigging for an afternoon in the class and discussing it is a lot better than me faking my way through it. So I think what's happened is we've all experienced now designers around the world who are willing to come in, for a small fee and teach a class or two. Not tell war stories, but actually teach and engage in a classroom. So I think that aspect of it, we certainly want to keep.
Can I address that for 1 second? Because this is something that Stan said a few weeks ago. And, you guys are acting like there hasn't been teleconferencing before Zoom. I did this all the time. I would bring people into my class through a program you guys may remember called Skype. And they teleconference. We had a way for the students to talk to the guests could talk to the students. I mean, this has been going on for years.
But I don't think it's been going on across the entire country.
No, people have been forced to do it now, and now they've experienced it. They realize it, but they could have been doing this before.
They could have been, but it's like any new technology. I don't want to do that. That's too much work. Oh, blah, blah, blah. But now they're realizing this is a viable way to deliver some information into the classroom.
Absolutely.
So,
I want to jump in on that. I agree with you, David, that it's not necessarily new. And I would do it in a couple of different ways before COVID, which was I've got colleagues down in Orlando. I have people who are on tour. They come through the area and they come to class. And I've absolutely been working on master classes. We had Brian McDevitt, in tech in our Roadhouse, and he said, "Hey, bring the students over." And we've done that, and then I've used Skype. But the thing is, man, I was using Skype. Here's what's changed, and Steve hits the point. Before, when I first discovered Skype, remember who made Skype? Do you guys remember? It was built by a couple of Russians. Okay, and then it was sold to Microsoft. And when I wanted to put Skype on my office computer, my IT guys were like, "No way, you cannot have that." There was a lot of fears and, it's difficult, and we have to put it on your machine. And I think what's changed, as Steve says, is that now it's ubiquitous. And yes, people were forced to, but I think it's also made it more commonplace, right? More because it wasn't like, these techies getting together and so on. So I think that is a big change.
We're also changing the type of students that we're teaching. So with each kind of new generation, whatever, they're coming in much more computer literate and much more comfortable in learning things from the internet. It's not going to replace in-person teaching by any stretch of the imagination. But there's a generation coming along, and this is going to be as common as taking your notebook and your pencil to class.
Following up on this subject about how students are changing, one of the sites I look at, pages on Facebook, is the Theater Educators, and mostly these people are high school educators for the most part. There was an interesting post today about this one faculty member, this one teacher, trying to explain to his class what metaphors are, and they could not understand
I saw that.
it. They could not understand what metaphor means. And he was asking for advice on, or she, I don't know the gender, on how to teach metaphors. Now, I think that says a lot about how prepared students are nowadays.
Well, students get their, it seems to me, they get a lot of their exposure through a screen. They don't get as much exposure through literature or through reading a great novel or through experience in the world. They seem to, everything sort of connects to some form of media for them. Now, that's a broad brush statement. Like right at the beginning of my graduate class, every day almost, they have to show an image. And we start with photography and then we move to art. Right, so we move from photography to then fine art, and we discuss the composition and the meaning and the background to the artist and so on and so forth. And some of them now are bringing in screenshots of film. Right, I've never seen that before, but that's kind of cool. That's what this particular student is interested in, and so they'll see a movie clip as opposed to a still image, or and then another one is very much into artists and it's exposing me to photographers and painters I didn't know about. So it does change in terms of what their exposure is, and so metaphor, might not just be in their lexicon. And they're not where did you learn what a metaphor was, David? How did you learn it?
How did I learn it? When I started writing. Yeah. I think I was in 5th grade.
Yeah.
And I started music back shortly after that. But yeah, as an artist, I learned all about it. But basically from reading and writing, I learned about metaphors.
Yeah, I think metaphors are a great way to explain something when it's a complicated concept. It's like this.
But you learned that as a child. It's amazing because even a lot of children's stories use metaphors all the time. Mm-hmm. And good cartoons are like that. Good cartoons are filled with metaphors.
You know what's really remarkable? If you go for us, I think maybe we don't give it enough credit, but I've been sort of, my wife was laughing at me because when I got the new TV that David helped me buy, I wanted to watch some animation. So I went back to Looney Tunes. And if you go back to Looney Tunes, the Warner Brothers stuff, it was classic. It was great classical music.
It's great
right?
writing.
And the stories were based on classics, and you sort of get that stuff into your blood.
If you look at Looney Tunes, the creator of Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck was from Dallas, and he based those characters on a number of people he knew in Dallas. Uh-huh. So he looked at them and said, "Oh yeah, this is what Bob does all the time," and gave those qualities to Daffy or to Bugs.
Well, you are listening to Light Talk, and Light Talk is sponsored by
the MAGA Corporation. Is your living room so dark it looks like a scene from the Waltons? Do you find yourself tripping over your dogs on your way to the refrigerator? Are you surprised to see your house guests still in your living room the morning after your latest super spreader party? Those weak, pathetic, and impotent LED lamps the environmentalists are forcing us to buy are ruining the fabric of America. Why not show your neighbors and guests a house that indeed burns their retinas? Show those tree huggers what a manly light bulb looks like. Replace those ridiculous LED lamps with the new MAGA Volt 5000. Plugged into several of your household outlets, the MAGA Volt 5000 magically produces the same amount of lumens as a 5,000-watt incandescent lamp. In fact, one strategically placed MAGA Volt 5000 produces enough light to brightly illuminate several rooms. How do we do it? The MAGA Volt 5000's unique energy-sucking technology pulls all those unused kilowatts from the power grid. And who cares? Those $7,000 electric bills have become commonplace to Texans. In fact, paying ridiculous sums of money for electricity is the patriotic thing to do. So to hell with those pansy new Green Deal socialists who want us all to live on kale and candles. Turn up the lumens with MAGA Volt 5000 and kiss those dark days goodbye.
And make America bright again.
Okay.
And now, back to Light Talk.
Well, those crazy ducks tells us that it's time for another installment of Let's Talk About. And today's Let's Talk About is all about a simple question. What will post-pandemic Manhattan look like?
Gray. It'll be gray.
It'll be Escape from New York.
Escape from New York. Well, the reason why we brought this up is because there was this great article in the Wall Street Journal by Peggy Noonan that was kind of depressing.
She's one of the reasonable people in the Wall Street Journal.
Well, there are several in the Wall Street Journal, actually. Yeah. I like the Wall Street. But anyway, she wrote it about what is happening to New York right now and what the future may look like.
And it isn't anything like the past, is what she's saying.
That's right. It's nothing like the past. And she pointed out a number of different things. Certainly, a lot of people who live in Manhattan have experienced. Well, first, we need a disclaimer, okay? Two of us in this group, Stan and me, we were born in New York, right? Stan, where were you born in New York?
Flatbush.
And I was born in Long Island. And Steve, where were you born? Tennessee, right?
Tennessee.
You're right, up in the mountains of Tennessee.
Clinch Mountain.
Clinch Mountain, Tennessee.
Clinch Mountain.
All right, yeah. So two of us are from New York, so we are kind of New Yorkers in our blood. All right, so we don't want to say that we're dissing New York. We're just trying to have a discussion here about
I don't mind dissing New York.
the future of Manhattan, because a lot of interesting things have happened. Let me give you a few statistics that I looked up. Manhattan rents over the past year went down 12.7%. Now, to give you an idea, LA, and again, this is a range because Los Angeles is a very large metropolitan area. It's down anywhere between 11 and 14%, so it's kind of the same amount. Dallas is actually up 1%.
That's because we have heat and water now.
Yeah, right. Although now that you get into $7,000 electric bills, that may be going down. Gainesville is up 1%. And amazingly, Las Vegas is up 6.38%.
Wow.
Which I find really surprising. But apparently, Las Vegas actually has been going through a huge real estate boom. And that same is happening here in Long Beach, where I live. The real estate has exploded here. I have no idea why, but it has. Anyway, so in this article, Peggy was talking about how a lot of these office buildings in Manhattan have been vacated by the corporations. And what's going to happen there? Obviously, there's a big question about theater. What's going to happen with theater? The question also about tourists. Will tourism still be a big part of New York? And of course, for support staff, people whose jobs depend on tourism, how is that going to affect everything? So, okay, it's on the table. What do you guys think Manhattan's going to look like in about 2 to 3 years?
Do we know what Manhattan is doing about subway riders?
Stan and I were talking about this earlier today. The whole commuter idea of coming into the city is obviously being affected because of the trains.
Yeah, so let me jump in on this. I posted this article, and one of my colleagues who studies urban areas, he's an architect, was saying that exactly what David's getting at, that there is a flip that's happening, that the notion of commuter cities is being flipped on its head. When we grew up there, David, you and I worked in Midtown Manhattan at Production Arts when it was at 636 to 11th Avenue, right in Hell's Kitchen, right? I would take me an hour and a half to commute into Manhattan to work, to be there at 9 o'clock or 8:30, and then an hour and a half to commute back out to South Brooklyn. And that's, for the most part, if you're blue collar in New York, you live in the boroughs, or you live on the island, or you live in New Jersey, and you come in. So there's this huge amount of energy consumption to move millions of people every day into Manhattan Island and then back out to their homes. And back then, of course, you just had extremely wealthy people who could live in or on Manhattan Island, like my aunt who worked at Columbia. You had to be pretty wealthy to live on Manhattan Island, or destitute, right? One or the other. The middle class didn't live there. So now the shift is the corporations are moving their sort of headquarters out on the other sides of the river into New Jersey and the boroughs and such. And Manhattan is becoming a residential location. And like the High Line, which is, they just converted this elevated highway into a walking space. And he was saying the restaurants now are taking over what were parking areas and turning them into outdoor dining with lots of green space.
That's happening all over the country. I mean, down the street, they've turned to parking lots.
Well, I think that's what he's saying, is that's sort of an architectural urban planning flip. And I think what Peggy's saying is that those kinds of massive disruptive changes are being accelerated by COVID. It's a very interesting time to move. It's hard for me to imagine New York not being this commuter-based urban environment, but something of the opposite, which could be very exciting and very interesting.
I was just thinking, how long will it take for the landlords to jack their prices back up again?
About 20 seconds.
Yeah, I think that'll come back pretty fast. They try to force you out. Once your rent control, once you leave, that rent control disappears. They don't look at the new tenant and go, oh, we'll cut you a deal. We're going to raise the price as far as we can possibly take it.
I don't know. My financial advisor told me to sell everything that was I owned in commercial real estate. He said commercial real estate is not coming back.
And buy GameStop.
Buy Tesla.
But I really did.
Oh, have you looked at Tesla prices lately?
Oh yeah. Don't rub it in. All right.
Yeah, but just think about that. Like, David and I were speculating this morning, what do you fill these office towers with? If you're McGraw-Hill and you have a 50-story office tower for all of your publishing people, and it holds 15, 20,000 workers, and you're only going to need 500 in that space, what are you going to do with those floors?
Yeah. Are you going to turn them into residences?
Right. Well,
I mean, maybe we really are at that turning point where people are going to work out of their homes.
That's
absolutely.
Then you can live in Salt Lake City, and the commute is down the hallway, and you're linked to your office in New York. So I think, if anything good has come out of the pandemic, I think that's something that's going to be good. It's going to make more opportunity to work in more fields.
Yeah, it's also family friendly too. The one thing that I like about that I've been teaching from home for the year is I've been around Pam more in the last year than I've probably been around her.
A true test of your marriage, Stan.
It is, and sometimes we do get on each other's nerves a little bit. But if you just added up the hours that I would be in commuting or at school,
Sure.
right? It has been family friendly. Now I'm just using my imagination here. If everybody's working from home, that's going to require an extraordinary backbone of infrastructure. Digital infrastructure, server farms, right? Switches, you name it. And I thought, well, New York City, like places like New York City and Omaha, Nebraska, Dallas, LA, you've got a lot of wires going through those cities for all kinds of reasons. So in those towers, you've got a lot of copper going up those floors. You've got a lot of ducting going up those floors for air conditioning. You have a lot of power plants to power that stuff. If 60% of the people who worked in office towers are now working from home, you need some kind of internet that I don't think we have right now. So where are those servers going to go, right? Well, they're going to go where the power is, where the cooling is, and where the maintenance people are to keep those artificial intelligence and servers take up room. These are a huge amount of machinery that's going to power the 21st century. So I don't know. I'm just dreaming. I can just picture, 15 floors of people and another 30 floors of, banks and banks and banks of digital technology.
Did you see the article yesterday about electricity from outer space?
Is it coming on a Jewish beam?
No, it's interesting because we're coming kind of full circle with Tesla. And I think it's NASA has tested the first satellite to convert energy to electricity and beam that electricity down to a laboratory.
Oh, please share that article. Got to read that.
Well, they're discussing that this could become a real, something real in about 30 years and could solve a lot of electrical problems on the planet.
Yeah, it would.
What does all this mean to our industry, to the live entertainment industry?
Nothing.
No, that's not true. I'm talking about, who are the people working in the theaters? Are they living in Manhattan? Will the theaters even survive? I know there's been an article out about how some theaters, it's impossible to retrofit them because they're so old. What's going to happen?
Well, we took down the Helen Hayes and the Belasco and we rebuilt modern theaters there and people cried. So I was unhappy about that, but we did that. So again, New York is creative destruction, always has been and always will be. That's what's going to happen.
The question will be answered probably around 2023. Between 2023 and 2025, we'll know the answers to these questions.
Peggy was talking about, 10 years, right?
Well, she was saying we won't really feel the true impacts of this global disruption that we've all experienced for decades. We really don't know what the world we're coming back to is really quite an unknown. It's not. She said very clearly. It kind of depressed me, but she said, it's not going to be 2019. Forget that. We're not going back. And even in my own school, we're using that language. We are not going back to the same grind that we were doing the last 20 years. People have said that we are not going back to that. And you know what? I'll just say this to button up my thoughts. Before COVID, I was having this thought, like, how much longer can the world go like this? At this pace, at this speed, at this level of incredible sort of chaotic movement, it's got to crash and hit a wall at some point. And I didn't think it was going to be a pandemic, but that's what I said it has to stop. Nothing can just keep going at that frenetic pace forever. And it did. And we've stopped. And I don't think we're just going to restart this same engine up again and put it back on the same track. It's going to be a different kind of world, and I hope for a better one.
It's interesting because getting back to New York and Manhattan, it's such a cultural icon. There's so many things happening there that I don't think tourism will ever die there. Because you have the museums, you have the symphony, you'll have the theater, and I'm assuming, of course, all this will be back, in force, maybe limited due to safety reasons, but still back. So it all depends on tourism. I really believe that.
You might see a renaissance of the LORT circuits. All of a sudden, people may not travel to Chicago or New York.
Right. Yeah.
All of a sudden, they go to Orlando or Atlanta or Dallas or Kansas City, and these become the kind of true regional theaters that was envisioned to bring that professional quality theater outside of New York.
Or we go to that whole Hamilton type of approach where you do a live show to a very limited audience and you broadcast it. It's pay-per-view to the world, which I think is really the future, to tell you the truth. I agree with you, Steve. Theater's not going to die. I never believed that.
But it's going to change.
But it's going to change, and there's still going to be live theater, but there's also going to be a whole expanded broadcast version of it that people will have access to. So that's a good thing.
I was just going to say, I have a pending contract for a live show in June. And, is it going to happen? Who knows? I think it's about, I'm going to give it a 25% chance of happening. But theaters are trying to reopen. They're trying so hard to reopen.
Yep. That was my point at the top of the show with the summer theaters.
Yeah, Peggy's point in her article, she says it's going to, and she talks specifically about the theater, the commercial theater. Actually, she does make a dichotomy between the commercial theater versus the regionals and what Steve's talking about. But the commercial theater, she said, it's going to be the last thing to come back because of how it's organized in New York City. So we'll see. But I think but I would reemphasize, I think diversification is just a good. I'm not saying you should be, a jack of all trades, master of none, but have a focus. If it's lighting, it's lighting, but diversify that lighting so you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
I'm talking about specifically live entertainment, where you're going to have to be able to understand broadcast lighting. You have to understand dealing with cameras, and you have to understand editing, and you have to understand obviously the physics and the techniques. I really think that's the future, but who knows? We're all speculating. We have no idea what's going to happen. Things may change tomorrow.
Anything we say on this podcast, what is that disclaimer again?
So, I mean,
don't hold us to any of this.
A new variant could come out tomorrow that wipes out the world. So,
Well, that's a cheery thought.
Anyway, Steve has the last question of the day.
Yes, it's Sherry in St. Paul. And Sherry writes, I was wondering, what does swag actually mean?
That's a good question.
I have no idea.
It sounds kind of suggestive.
I don't know what the hell swag means.
SWAG, does it mean something?
If you don't know what swag is, swag are giveaways. And this is stuff, maybe your high school is giving away a plastic cup at a basketball game with your mascot on it.
Wait, we give away swag too. We give away a useless coffee mug.
Well, it's not useless. It's just the label on it's useless. It ranges from T-shirts to bottle openers to luggage tags, and it's usually promoting a production or a product. So okay. Here's my answer to what does swag mean. Stuff we all get.
Is that true or is that a guess?
That's good. No, that's good that Steve. I think that's great that Steve made that up. But I looked up the definition. Number one, a curtain or piece of fabric fashioned so as to hang in a drooping curve.
That's a swag. That's a swag.
That's not it.
That's not it.
Or informal. Money or goods taken by a thief or burglar.
Well, that makes more sense.
Well, that's the right there.
We're going to cut that out.
Stuff we all get is good, though. I like that.
Stuff that we all get is good.
That's
okay,
good.
But we are thieves. There's no doubt about it. Well, the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tells us that once again you've spent another long morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on Spotify, iTunes, Google, Live Design Online, and YouTube, and just about every other podcast site out there. Check out our website on lighttalk.org for future guests, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you take our speculation seriously, don't litigate us, because if you do, the law firm of Flecht, Flock, Flair, and Glare and their paralegal Snoot, who lives in New York, will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, and from deep in the heart of Texas.
Warm Texas. And be sure to join us next week when we talk about more crazy happenings in our crazy industry.
All that and a hot, cold sponsor.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Toodles.